Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
I wanted to get your expert thoughts, Dr. Shabir, on some of the biblical references that the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been making, particularly to rally the troops. And some of these references seem rather harsh and difficult for anybody to kind of stomach, Dr. Shabir. So I wanted you to give us a little bit of an understanding of what those references are. I've heard, the word Amalek and Jericho. So tell us what these are and tell us what he's referring to. And then how do we understand them in the context of what's going on in Palestine right now?
Yeah. So in one of his references, like he was speaking to a group of soldiers, and he was, spurring them on by saying, okay, you are fighting as part of a great tradition that goes back thousands of years to Joshua. So the reference to Joshua, this would be well known to, in that culture. Joshua is a prominent book in the Bible. And also a prominent prophet, the one who succeeded Moses. And he was probably the young man, at least in Islamic tradition, who is mentioned in the Quran traveling alongside Moses in the 18th chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, though his name is not given there. So in any case, in the book of Joshua, we see Joshua taking on the leadership after Moses, and he's leading the Israelites to victory, conquering one town after another. And usually when he goes into a town, to a city, he decimates the population, sometimes burning the city and so on. Mm-hmm. Now, Jericho is especially etched in the memories of readers of the Bible. Mm. And I'll tell you an anecdote about myself, which probably you didn't know. When I was a kid, I went to Sunday school. Studying like Christian texts and so on, because in those days the children were running about; they didn't have much to do, and the Sunday schoolers went around the village and gathered the children, and the parents, felt that this is okay. The children will at least be in safe hands, and they will be busy, maybe coloring, pictures of David and Goliath and whatever.
Yeah, learning something good.
Something good, yeah. So either there or within the wider context of that social milieu in which I grew up, the song still keeps playing in my head. Round and round the walls of Jericho, round and round the walls of Jericho, round and round the walls of Jericho. The walls came tumbling down. Now,
how old were you? You must have been like 6 or 7.
I don't know how old I was when that got etched into my memory, but here it's still there, right? Decades later. So what is this song? Like, this song reflects what the book of Joshua says, that Jericho was surrounded by an impregnable wall, as cities were built with their own fortifications and protections from invading armies, such as like the army of Joshua. But Joshua was, from the biblical narrative's perspective, on the side of God, and God is going to help Joshua and his people. So his men march around the city walls. They go around and round, and they blow into their shofars, their horns, and miraculously, with the blast of the shofar, the walls came crumbling down. And that is when Joshua and his army marched into the city and decimated the entire population. Mm-hmm. So I guess the children's song doesn't go to that extent, but we know that from the Bible, and readers of the Bible know that. So for Bibi Netanyahu to be making this kind of reference, what is he spurring his army to do? Is he spurring them towards, a humanitarian entry into Gaza and taking care of, the principle of discrimination, saving the civilians from harm? Or is he spurring them on to go into a genocidal rampage into the city and into the region in general, into the Gaza Strip? Now, the other reference you mentioned is about
Amalek.
Amalek, yes. Now, the Amalekites are a people mentioned in the Bible, and there's an interesting book called Laying Down the Sword by Bishop Philip Jenkins. And the subtitle of that book is Why We Cannot Ignore the Bible's Violent Verses, something to this effect. So he pointed out that if anybody wants to this day, to demean a people, they refer to them as Amalekites. That's a signal to your supporters that, you know, those people are like, you know, animals. You just, you know, deal with them in the harshest way possible. So we come back to the story as told in the Bible. In 1 Samuel, chapter 15, we have two key figures. One is the king, King Saul, who is known in the Quran as Talut. And then there is a prophet along with him. That's the prophet Samuel. The prophet is mentioned in the Quranic narrative as well in Surah Al-Baqarah, but the prophet is not named. And in any case, the horrific narrative that will follow now is not mentioned like this in the Quran. So in this book of Samuel, it is mentioned that God commanded Samuel to dictate to the king Saul that he's to kill off the Amalekites, every last soul of them, men, women, children, infants, everybody, and even the cattle. And so on. So Saul went on this this rampage of killing off the people, but for some reason he saved the Amalekite king Agag, and he took some of the cattle for himself. But then Samuel got a revelation from God that he's to say to Saul that God has now regretted that he made you king. Because you didn't finish the job. And now Samuel himself goes on to finish the job. He, by the end of that chapter, 1 Samuel chapter 15, he goes and hacks the Agag, the Amalekite king, to pieces. So there's a prophet of God acting like this, the king who is commanded by God to go and kill off the people, even the infants. So now, if you are going to say to your troops today, remember what the Amalekites did to you, then what kind of imagery is that going to evoke in the minds of these soldiers? This is one of the reasons why many will support the South African case of genocide brought to the ICJ, because we see hints along the way that there is a kind of genocidal...
More than hints, Dr. Shabir.
I mean, so we can say these are indicators of an underlying genocidal intent. And of course, intent is very difficult to prove because one can always say, I didn't mean it that way, or whatever the case is. This has to play out in the courts. But it is nonetheless at least irresponsible for anyone to be making these references in the present context, because it will just give a green light to your soldiers to go in there and be as harsh as possible within. Of course, they've got strictures. There's no doubt about that. But within those strictures, they will find ways to be as harsh as possible if you're giving them this sort of signal. And may God save the people of Gaza.
And of course, it does wrong to the Bible itself, because it brings it into a context, and pulls verses out of context just to suit negative and harmful causes. Yes,
and we know all too well how Muslims have done that with the Quran, and it is also appalling to see people do it with the Bible and with any scripture.
Yes,
the scriptures basically are there to teach us good things, and the Quran says, listen to the scripture and follow the best that is therein. Right. So that's what people should do. Read the scriptures and take the good teachings out of them and practice them and preach them to the world. But don't go looking for the things which will lead to this kind of negative result, like the killing of people in Gaza.
Thank you for that, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. We have some exciting news to share with you.
As you know, Let the Quran Speak has been on TV screens and social media for 22 years.
We've been reaching people all around the world, spreading positivity and good, and helping people experience the beauty of Islam and the accomplishments of Muslims.
We've been shooting in this very space for the past 2 decades.
And now, with the help of Allah, we're about to get the keys to Muslim Media Hub.
If you like what we're doing, you're gonna love Muslim Media Hub even more.
Because it's the next step up.
Think new TV shows, podcasts, social media content, and film.
It will have new talent, more youth, and a lot more space and resources to do what we love. Spread the message of Allah.
Our Muslim Media Hub costs $2.4 million.
And for that, we need to raise $300,000. Please give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help establish Muslim Media Hub so we can do this.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be of benefit to the Muslim community long after we are gone.
Thank you, and may Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always.
Assalamu alaikum.